Hello! So Microsoft have released the Boeing Stratoliner for Microsoft Flight Simulator. So I recorded a live stream with it earlier and I've written up a checklist, so I thought I might record a proper first look at it, just to go around the aeroplane, get it up and running, take it for a quick flight, just to show it and put it through its paces a little bit. So we're going to have a look around it first with the drone camera. You can see the material modelling is absolutely stunning. So as we move around the aeroplane, this is one of the liveries that comes with it. It's the polished livery. So you can see the engine blocks, the propellers, everything about it is absolutely gorgeous. The material modelling of all the surfaces around the aircraft, the nuts and the bolts, you really can't fault it. So if we come underneath the aeroplane and go and look at the wheels, everybody seems to be obsessed with looking at the wheels of these aeroplanes. So you can see it's very nicely done, and the hydraulics as well, all the cables, and it's very, very good. Okay, so if we go and come back up to the cockpit, we can go and have a look around inside. So if we come through the cockpit, so the modelling of the instruments is very, very nicely done. So you can see inside the cockpit we've got all the various levers and switches. Not everything is operable, and it's certainly not study level. You know, you can get away with an awful lot, but I guess they're aiming it towards a mass audience, so I'm not going to complain too much about that. But what is here is great fun to play with, and it's very easy to fly. It's very easy to operate. So it turns out though the position or the pre-programmed views aren't great for starting the aeroplane up, so it actually makes more sense to drag yourself around the cockpit using the mouse to get things fired up. There's an engineer station, so the original aircraft would have had a crew of a pilot, a co-pilot and a flight engineer, and a communications officer as well. So you've got a Morse code set here, but it's entirely decorative. It doesn't actually work. Neither does the comm radio up there. So there is clipping if you use the normal views, so you can't go and wander straight through into the galley, into the passenger compartment. But if we use the drone camera, we can. So we can go and fly down through the passenger compartment, and you can see it's a shame because the modelling in here is wonderful as well, and if you didn't know about using the drone camera you wouldn't ever see it. So we can come down and fly down through the cabin, and you can see it's really, really nicely done. Obviously you can pretend to get the experience that a passenger would have got. The windows have all got, you know, slight marks on them and things. It makes it very authentic. Okay, so we'll put the Xbox controller to one side for the moment, and we'll press insert to go back into the cockpit away from the drone camera. So let's go and see what's involved in getting this airplane up and running. So it's worth pointing out, I've seen a few bugs where I couldn't start the engines, and I restarted the simulator and it worked fine. So there are a couple of little bugs in it. I'm not sure what causes them. It could be something I've done. So anyway, we're not going to worry too much. So a couple of things straight away then. Above the pilot you can see there's a refuel switch and a services switch. If you go and look outside now, the refuel puts this petrol tank out the front, which is really lovely, and the services puts a stewardess stood on the stairs and some bags on a trolley. So it's just some nice little touches there. So over on the engineer station we can go and switch the ground power at the top of the station. The light comes on, so we've got power to the aircraft. So then over on the co-pilot section we can then go and turn some lights on. So if we go and look overhead, we've got the position lights already on. I've already done it. So you can see I've been meddling around with the aeroplane before we actually started recording, and the rotating beacon light is on. I've already done that previously. Forgot to turn it back off. So then engineering section again, we can go and switch all of the fuel valves on to main. So that's done. Then we can go and turn on the pitot heat. So I don't really agree with the ordering of a lot of these things, but we're not going to complain too much about it. So the inverters we can go and switch to auto. we can calibrate the altimeters just by pressing B to do that, as we can normally in Flight Simulator. And now we're going to go and start the engines. So to start the engines, it's pretty straightforward. So what we're going to do, you can see there's a bank of switches up here that do engines 1, 2, 3 and 4. So the switches can flick in either direction. So to start engine number 1, we go boost, prime, start, count to 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, turn the magnetos to both, and then if we look outside you'll see smoke come pouring out and the engine burst into life. Okay, so same again for engine number 2. So we go boost, prime, start, 2, 3, 4, 5, magnetos to both. It belches smoke out and then we get up and running. So engine number 3, boost, prime, start, 2, 3, 4, 5. And engine number 3 is up and running. And then engine number 4, boost, prime, start, 2, 3, 4, 5, and magnetos to both, and the engine's up and running. So if you experience the same bug I saw, the engines will just turn over slowly and they won't fire up. I didn't get to the bottom of what caused it, I just restarted the sim and it was all fine. Okay, so back inside the aircraft, we're going to go and turn the generators on. Now this is I think this is missing from the checklist. So generator 1 on, generator 2 on. So pilot position, so press F. Then in the refuel section we're going to go and turn off that refuel and the services, so they'll go away. So when we look outside now, we've just got the ground power unit. So then we are going to go back over to that service section over here, or the engineering section, and we're going to go and switch over to battery now. So the ground power unit will have been pulled out of the way. Okay, so in front of the pilot we can go and turn the avionics switch on, which is up here. So it's got a modern autopilot look, which is quite novel. And we can then do some basic pre-takeoff checks around the aircraft. So we're going to check things like mixture levers are on fully rich, the propeller levers are on maximum RPM, the throttle levers are good. We can just check around the manifold pressures, RPMs, pressures, and so on and so forth, just to make sure everything looks good, and it does, it's all fine. To be honest, this aircraft is not super accurate in terms of engine management, so you don't need to worry too much. Okay, so we're going to go and taxi out. Let's go and see where we are in the world. We're at Monterey Airport. So we need to take off runway 28. So we're going to double back on ourselves here. So to get it up and running, we're going to take the parking brakes off. It's a big old lump, isn't it? And we're going to double back on ourselves. So we're going to open the engines up. It takes a bit of thrust to get it moving, but then once it's rolling, it rolls quite happily. So there we go. Because it's a tail dragger, you can actually turn around quite easily. You just have to be aware, if you do lose momentum, you're going to have to use a lot of power to get the thing rolling again. So we just taxi down to the far end of the runway, and then we'll go for a little flight around the area and come back in for an approach. So it has a gyro pilot, it also has this modern autopilot, so I would argue it's much easier to use this. The one thing you have to bear in mind is to set your direction, you have to use the rudder knob on the gyro pilot, which has now started rolling all on its own, look. So you have to be careful about it. So you use the rudder knob and then you can tune the heading mode for the autopilot. It has got nav radios, so if we press Control and 4, you can see they're on the back of the central pedestal. So you've got comm radios and nav radios down here. So you can tune them in, and then the nav instruments up here will work. So they've just got normal omni-bearing selectors on them. They work really nicely. Okay, so we're just taxiing down quite quickly. We'll go out to the runway on the next intersection. So it has got flaps, but you don't need them for takeoff. So I'll just show you them. You can see them animating down there. They take a while to travel, so it's something to bear in mind as well. It's a big old lump of an aeroplane, isn't it? So reading the documentation about it, it was designed to cruise at 20,000 feet, which gave it a huge leg up on competing aircraft of the time like the DC-3, because it could climb above, you know, weather, basically. Okay, so let's open the engines up. Let's see what it sounds like. Sounds fantastic. So we'll just hold the centre line. It has got a control to lock the tail wheel, but you've got very good rudder authority, so you don't typically need it. So we're just coming up to 120 miles an hour. So just gently pull back and we're in the air straight away. So we're going to pull the throttles back so the manifold pressure's not over the red line. So let's get the view outside and we'll lift the wheels up so you get to see the animation happen. Okay, so let's press Control 4 and sorry, Control. What have I just done? I've just pressed the wrong button somewhere here. Oh, I've pushed the RPM back. That was an interesting one. So be careful with your key combinations, hey? So let's go and get rid of that ATIS. So we'll go and detune the comm radio just by flicking it over. Oh, it's being real so-so, isn't it? There we go. Just turning back round. It's a lovely looking aeroplane. So I mentioned that it has a gyro pilot, so we'll just go and unfortunately the clouds are not playing ball with us today. We can see thankfully we have got an attitude indicator. So let's just level up a second and we'll show you how this works. So we will match our heading. So at the moment we're travelling along at about 60 degrees. So you can see the white arrow on the gyro compass over here. So we will match that over here with 60 degrees. Just level out. More like 50 degrees now, moving towards 40 degrees. So it does move around. So there's 30, 40 degrees over here. So if we go and engage the autopilot over here, and we say heading mode, Obviously it's not going to waver too much because we were almost going the same direction, but then we can control the direction we're flying by turning the knob on the gyro pilot, which will control the heading that it's flying towards. And obviously you can use this as a guide. So this doesn't actually control anything, it is purely a guide. So if you are flying by hand, you're trying to keep the compass within the guides. Otherwise this works the same as any other you would ever see. So we're coming up to 3,000 feet, for example. So if we went for 3,000 feet and did altitude, hold, it's going to, there we go, look, it's levelling out as we speak. So we'll come back off the autopilot because it's pretty standard how that works. Pull the throttle back a bit and we're going to fly back round to Monterey and do an approach. So the airfield's just over here. It's a gorgeous looking aeroplane, isn't it? So obviously if you're doing a longer flight, it's got, if we go and look over here, you can trim the engines out to auto lean once you're in cruise, and you can control RPM. So obviously we're running max RPM at the moment. But it's all predictable and it's very, very docile and very easy to fly. So no surprises really at all with it. It's very good. Turn back in towards the airfield. Try and lose some speed on the way, so we'll cut the power back, doing about 150 miles an hour. Could have done without some of this sea fog, couldn't we? Makes it a bit more realistic having to deal with a little bit of weather. Okay. So there's the airfield over there. Speed's coming down, which is good. So let's get the undercarriage out. Don't want to get much slower than about 120 at the moment, so I'm just opening the engines up a little bit more. We're going to drop the flaps as well, but only to the first stage. We're not going to go for full flaps just yet. We will once we get lined up. So the airfield's over here. So obviously you have got no instruments, so you can fly ILS. It'd be a bit awkward though having to look up the whole time, so you might want to think about, you know, your positioning within the cockpit if you're going to do an instrument approach in this aeroplane. So we're just dipping down below 120 knots, so sorry, 120 miles an hour. So obviously this is a big heavy lump of an aeroplane, so you can't throw it around the sky acrobatically. We've gone to full flaps now, so let's go and have a look to see what that looks like. Great big barn door flaps. Here comes the airfield. The reflective finish on this is really quite stunning, isn't it? Sim's just frozen. Wait for it to unfreeze itself. It's some sort of data feed problem with the servers, I think, that causes that. There you go, it's just caught up. Yeah, this is really, really nicely modelled, isn't it? Really is something else. So here comes the runway. Let's go and jump inside. So the default camera view when you press F is a little bit wide angle, so I always find myself adjusting it slightly. So we just turn towards the runway. You do tend to need to use rudder to keep the nose pointing in a straight line. It does wander and wallow. And you end up looking, you know, just tipping yourself sideways to see beyond the pillar that tends to be right in front of the pilot's line of sight. So we'll just deal with that. So as you can see, I'm doing lots of small inputs on the control column. It's a shame you can't see the indicated airspeed if you're controlling the... Yeah, oh sorry, if you move sideways you can't then see the indicated airspeed, which is a little bit of a problem, but not too bad. So we're a little bit high looking at the puppy lights there. So we'll just descend down. We want 2 reds and 2 whites ideally. There we go, 2 reds, 2 whites. So cut the throttles, let it fall. And we're down. So hold it to the centre line. Like I said, the rudder authority is very, very good. Get the tail wheel into the floor and back pressure on the control column to keep the aeroplane going in a straight line. We can raise the flaps now. So no real dramas, it's very, very easy to fly. So the wheel brakes don't seem to tip it forwards, so you can be quite aggressive on the wheel brakes as well. We're going to taxi back down and park next to the hangars down here. It's a lovely looking aeroplane, isn't it? It really is. Okay, should we go in between the Kodiak and the Bird Dog over here? I think we'll just about fit. Parking brake on. So you've got several ways you can cut the engines. The safest way, I think, is just to pull the mixtures, which will obviously use up any fuel in the real world in the pipes. Obviously once the engines have stopped spinning, so you can see that happening, it's got some nice animations about them turning over. Once they've stopped spinning, you can obviously go and turn off the magnetos. and we can go and turn off some of the lights that we had on. So the beacon light, the position light, so we can turn the generators off now. Turn off the pitot heat. We can go and turn off the avionics. Go over to the engineer station and shut off the fuel valves. And we can turn the battery power back off. And that's pretty much it. There's not a lot to do. Obviously, when you're in flight, you can, if you're concentrating on cruise, you've got radios to play with. You've got the de-icing controls to play with. There's a lot to play with inside the aeroplane, but it's very, very straightforward to fly. So there you go. That was the Boeing Stratoliner. So I will put a link in the notes to the checklist that I've written up. It's very much a work in progress, so expect it to change over the coming days as we figure out more and more about how to more correctly operate this aeroplane. I don't agree with the checklist that comes with it, so we'll see how we get on. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there, and I'll see you again soon.